Well, welcome everyone to today's ServiceNow Process Mining Jumpstart series session. This is the third session in a series of 4 targeted at customers who are entitled to our in-platform process mining solution, but really haven't started to dig in and take full advantage of it yet. In our first session in the series, we introduced the topic of process mining, what it is, why it's important. In the second, we looked at the building blocks of a process mining project, and we walked through creating our first couple of projects together. And today we'll focus on the different aspects of the Analyst Workbench and the different capabilities in there that help you explore your process data and identify improvement opportunities. The purpose of these sessions is to help us all get better educated on ServiceNow's process mining capabilities, how they work. Well, we have a scheduled topic that we'll usually cover for the first 30 minutes or so. And as we go through the topic, just post your questions in the Q&A, and I'll do my best to address them. I've carved out some time before the demonstration and after the demonstration piece to address those questions. So get them in there. If I don't answer them right away, just know that I'm going to get to them eventually. But please post them as the questions come up, and I'll sort through them when the time comes. Now, this is the slide that says that anything I say and do here today can't be held against me in the court of law. It's also the slide that says, as part of this conversation, if we make any forward-looking statements about things that might be coming in future releases, you should take them as forward-looking statements, make no decisions based on them whatsoever, because things are always subject to change. And I'm sure you've read the fine print. For those that I've not worked with before, my name is Dan Grady. I'm part of the process mining product team here at ServiceNow. And what we'll do today, we'll do that quick little process mining 101 refresher. We'll run through the different capabilities in the Analyst Workbench, like bottleneck and variation analysis. We'll run through them in slides first, and then we'll demo a bunch of them. We'll talk about the platform intelligence capabilities that have been baked into the solution to help you do your digging or mining, I should say. And then we'll jump into a demo and show you all these capabilities in action. We'll get your questions answered and wrap up with some other resources available for you above and beyond today. Most of you know I love to start these sessions with this quote: "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better." And I like the quote for 2 reasons. One, it usually aligns to the reason that we've all gathered to learn a little bit more about the ServiceNow platform, then take that knowledge, go back, apply it, and get more value out of our investment with ServiceNow. And it also aligns to process mining, which is designed to help us x-ray the workflows we have running on the ServiceNow platform, and then start showing us where and how we could be doing better for everyone involved with them. As always, we'll start with that quick little process mining 101 for the newcomers. So with everything we do, there's a designed and desired path in our minds for how it should work and how things should play out, whether that be planning an event like this session here or a business process. And when we design things, we design for both efficiency as well as completeness to provide the best experience possible for as many people as possible. Unfortunately, what we design isn't always what ends up happening in reality. The reality is that not all work is going to be flowing through the process based on the optimal path. And that's going to have a negative impact on the experience that both people requesting service are having, as well as the people trying to deliver that service. Now, identifying what's actually happening within our business processes and then improving them isn't always easy. What process mining allows us to do is use the audit log data that is generated as records move through a given workflow on the platform. And then what we can do is take those audit log data and we can use it to create a visual representation of what's actually happening within the process. This new level of visibility is going to help us accelerate our ability to identify inefficiencies, non-conformant process activities, and improvement opportunities. Process mining gives us the ability to answer process questions that have historically been a little bit challenging for us to answer. So where traditional analytics will help us answer a lot of the what questions about our processes, like how many tickets or incidents or cases did we work and how long did it take to close them, process mining helps us answer the whys. So things like, where is our process getting stuck? Where is the unnecessary rework happening? Where do we have incidents or cases ping-ponging between different groups or teams? Where aren't we conforming to the process we've designed? These are all things, like I said, that have been historically difficult to answer and act upon, and now they're available to us in just a couple of clicks. And you learned how to create these projects in those clicks last time. This time, we'll look at how a few more clicks can help us get to the answers to these questions. We always like to say that process mining is going to get us to the why behind all of your KPIs, and then in doing so, empower everyone involved in the process to make more data-driven decisions about which improvements to make. All right, let's get to those building blocks. Last time we covered all the foundational concepts you needed to create a project and then visualize your process. In this session, we'll cover all the different ways to work with that project and the visualized process map to identify inefficiencies and improvement opportunities. It looks like a lot when it's in list form, but we'll get through it pretty quickly. All right, so once we configure in Mine, we're going to be brought to the Process Mining workspace to review and dig into our results. There will either be 2 or 3 tabs in the workspace for each project, depending on how we configure things. The first will be our Summary and Insights page, which will give us high-level information about the data we mined. Volume of records, velocity to get through the process, number of different routes or variants we took to get to closure. It will also surface all of the improvement opportunities based on the finding definitions that we have configured for that table. These improvement opportunities will be grouped and categorized. You'll be able to use those as like a starting point for any analysis that you want to do. The other thing to be aware is that the Summary and Insights page has a pre-configured dashboard that comes with the content packs for each workflow, like ITSM or CSM or HR, and that's going to contain some out-of-the-box performance analytics KPIs. Don't worry if you're not using performance analytics, you've got your own KPIs. These are completely configurable. You just might need to adjust them to match your environment. The other thing that I'll call out here is that in the Washington release, which comes out imminently, tomorrow, I believe, we've added an auto-generated dashboard that's based specifically on the data that you mined. So for those of you that aren't using performance analytics, you'll now have something to put in that spot. The second tab is the Visualize Process Map, and this is where you'll spend most of your time and where you'll be we'll be spending most of our time here today, using things like breakdowns and other capabilities like bottleneck root cause and variation analysis to allow us to start having a conversation with our process data, right? You ask a question, you get an answer. Based on that answer, you're going to follow it up with another question based on what the data is telling you. I always like to say mining is a verb, right? You have to do it. You have to interact with the data to get to the results that you want and the process improvement opportunities you're going to make. Now, on the Analyst Workbench or the Process Map screen, one of the primary things you'll be using to better understand your process data are breakdowns. Breakdowns allow you to filter the data on the map, but they also give you statistical insights into the data to help guide the questions you're asking. So breakdowns can be things like categories, locations, priorities, HR services that you have inside of the organization. And you're allowed to configure up to 10 breakdowns per project. And these can either be choice or reference fields, as you learned the last time. The bottleneck analysis capability helps us isolate which process transitions are causing delays. So a transition can be a record moving from one state to another. For example, a ticket or case moving from in progress to on hold, or maybe it could be from a case moving from one assignment group to another. Maybe we're looking to see how long it takes to triage a ticket and move to a second level group. This is all information that's found in the Analyst Workbench, and we can configure to help us dive into it a little bit deeper. Just so you know that this bottleneck analysis, it's surfaced on the right-hand side of the screen. When you get into the Analyst Workbench, you click on it, you expand it, and you click on the top thing, the top icon, you click to expand the right-hand panel, and the bottleneck analysis button is there. In the Xanadu release, we're going to be resurfacing this bottleneck analysis on the Summary and Insights page itself. So bottleneck analysis focuses on specific transitions. The process variation analysis focuses on complete paths or routes a record is taking. It'll show you each and every different route. And when you see the reality of your processes, there's going to be way more routes than or variants than you anticipated. This is one of the ways that we can see how well we're conforming to our designed processes, like which tickets and teams are skipping steps and which routes are long running with too many hops involved in them. Or maybe we start looking at a map of priorities and categorizations, and we get to see which things are being reprioritized or recategorized more often than others. Using the variation analysis in combination with a project that has assignment group set as the activity is a great way to identify unnecessary group transfers or multi-hop or ping pong situations. Work that is touching 3 or more teams represents a great opportunity to potentially streamline a process, reclaim some time for the organization, and drive more productivity. This is one of the most popular scenarios, this assignment group analysis or with the variation, assignment groups with variation analysis. With both bottleneck and variation analysis, you see that you have the ability to drill down into the map that focuses on a given route or bottleneck. But sometimes you're going to want to isolate a very specific set of transitions, like let's say incidents or cases that go from group A to group B and then back to group A that maybe contain the word Zoom in the short description. Or perhaps you'll want to look at tickets that are taking longer than a day to assign and then less than an hour to resolve, right? That's a great feeding ground for self-service opportunities. You have advanced transition filtering capabilities to ask and answer these types of questions. These in-process type of queries are just not possible with reporting, like using the different steps in the process or the history of the path that a ticket took or an incident took or a case took. You just don't have that ability with reporting. It's super handy to have that within Process Mining to use the audit log data. So just keep in mind that the transition filters that we have access to, they use the audit log data to allow us to narrow down or scope the data set that we're looking at on the map. The condition filters, they act on the current state records, just like the operational reporting on the platform does. So there's 2 ways to filter: the current state reporting way, and then using the audit log data with our transition filtering. Now, there's a histogram available on any node or arc that you click on in the map, and this is going to provide us distribution analysis to help us pinpoint specific sets of work that are either long runners or bouncing in and out of a specific state or assignment groups. Whenever we see these types of things, they're typically improvement opportunities, right? The long runners are the things that are bouncing in and out of states more than once, or teams more than once, right? The histograms also very helpful in validating some of the average duration values you see in the workbench. So you can, you might see a high average duration, but if you look at kind of the median, it might be a little bit smaller. And so what the histogram does is help us see, where do the majority of the records fall? Like, are there a handful of long runners that are potentially skewing the average? This type of information is really useful, and you can then use the histogram itself to isolate the map based on the data bin, the data bins in the histogram. So maybe you just want to focus in on the outliers. You have the ability to click on those on the histogram, drill down into them, and just focus on the outliers. Now I added this slide. It might seem obvious, but I did want to make sure that I pointed out, as you're having this conversation with your process data, at any point, you can always drill down into the detailed records if you have the rights to do so, of course. Now, this is a big difference between some other process mining solutions out there. And the reality is, this is where a lot of the actionable information lives. So one thing to note here is that the view records option is on the node and the arc pop-up when you're on the primary map itself. But when you swap over to do variation analysis, it's not going to be available on the pop-up. You need to go into the map itself on the canvas. You'll see a little drop-down that says variance options that you'll get your show records from. I've seen a few customers get a little bit confused, like, wait a minute, in one place I see and I get to the records here, but then I go over to this view, I'm not seeing the view records option. And that's because just look for that little variance options box. Now, as you start using all these different ways to filter and isolate your data, you're going to start seeing some interesting things. And then you may want to compare a filtered map to an original or something like that. When you find these unique scenarios, you're going to want to kind of come back to them later in conversations or with others in the organization. And you might want to do some comparison analysis, as I was just saying. So just know that you have the ability to save the scenario as a filter set. So each time you remind the project, this saved filter set is going to be available to you. So you might be going through and you might be, like the slide says, you might focus in on incidents that go into the state of avoiding caller info more than once. And then also touch or come in via the email channel. That might be something you want to come back to over and over again, or show somebody at a later time. Saving as a filter set just makes it readily available to you, that combination of things that you've clicked on. And then when you do save those filter sets, they're very handy when you want to do some side-by-side comparison of the total data set and then just that filter data that you have. Or you can do this process model comparison to look at different regions or different locations and how the process is being performed in different parts of the organization. Or maybe you're outsourcing similar work to two different vendors and you want to see how one vendor is performing versus the other. This side-by-side comparison is also very useful for situations in which you want to look at the impact of a process change that you may have made. So you want to do a side-by-side comparison of the process and how it was working prior to the change. And then you put on the other side how it was performing after the change to see if there was any adverse effects to any of the changes that you made. So you have this ability to do this side-by-side comparison, and it's very, very useful. As we find all these inefficiencies and opportunities, you're going to want to share and collaborate with others involved in the process. You can take snapshots of your findings and invite others to look at the map. Just so you know, there's a pre-built connection with continual improvement management. If you're not familiar with continual improvement management application, it's designed to help you capture, align, prioritize, and track all of the improvement initiatives you have in your organization. So as a process owner or a business analyst is exploring the process map and the workbench, when they find an opportunity, they can immediately create a new initiative or link to an existing initiative so the findings don't get lost in the shuffle. And this just helps ensure that insights get acted upon and that value gets realized, right? So that's one of these things, like I've always mentioned, when you start doing process mining, there's going to be no shortage of opportunities to improve, but you can't act on them all at once, right? Creating these initiatives in continual improvement and linking a process project to them just ensures that things get followed up on, holds people in the organization accountable to acting on these insights so we realize some value. And then from a continual improvement record, you can create all these additional types of records depending on what your process is in the organization. Process mining also has a pre-built connection with Automation Center. So Automation Center is meant to give you complete visibility into all the automation activities and the value they're providing, as well as future automation opportunities and requests. So let's say a process owner is analyzing a map and they see a virtual agent conversation opportunity. Right from the analyst workbench, they can create an automation request, and that's going to be tracked and followed up on inside of Automation Center. All right, so that was already a lot, but this is like one of those TV infomercials. But wait, there's more. There's a number of built-in capabilities that take advantage of the platform intelligence components. So let's just look at those real quickly, and then we'll kind of get into the instance. So there's automated findings, cluster and root cause analysis, and then the option to include an automation discovery report in your project as an additional tab. So let's run through each of these before we get to the live demo piece. First and foremost, we have finding definitions. And these are meant to surface, or they get surfaced as improvement opportunities on the summary and insights page. So finding definitions are preset rules that you can apply to the data that you're mining. They basically allow you to bucket and highlight inefficient or non-conformant activity. Things like multi-hop issues or processes that are bypassing steps can be highlighted like right up front before any persona even gets into the visualized process map. We provide some of these pre-built finding definitions via those content packs that I was mentioning earlier, just to help you get jump started. But then, of course, you're going to be able to create your own finding definitions to test and prove out the hypotheses that you have about inefficiencies within your own process. Now, for most organizations, there's no shortage of process improvement opportunities, but identifying all of them and then prioritizing which ones to focus on first can be a pretty daunting task. The combination of those rule-based findings and then with these automated findings that we added in the Vancouver release really helps streamline that process. So the automated findings, you can simply just kind of point process mining at a set of data, and we're automatically going to start to surface work that has some form of inefficiency, whether that be rework, so things that are kind of going from, let's say, A, B, C, and then back to A in the process. So you can configure a detector to look for all those rework situations. We can also configure a detector that was going to surface all the ping pong scenarios where work is bouncing back and forth between steps or groups or individuals. So going A, B, A, B, A, B. There's also an extra step detector that's going to highlight situations where we have a variant of the process with one additional or extra step that could be slowing us down. Those three, the rework, the ping pong, and the extra step detector, those were available to customers in the Vancouver release. And then in Washington, we're adding 4 more. Pattern repetition detector, an extreme duration detector, an extreme repetition detector, and a slow transition detector. Will all these things, like when we start flagging all these with all these detectors, will they all be things that you need to act upon? Probably not. But by automatically surfacing them and then allowing someone to flag the ones worth following up on, it significantly is going to accelerate your ability to identify process improvement opportunities. So, like, for example, where the rule-based findings are great for situations where you have a specific inefficiency that you want to better understand or help maybe capture data to help you prioritize acting upon it. The automated ones are great for those situations where you don't know what you don't know. Cluster analysis, this takes advantage of the in-platform machine learning capabilities. So you may have used the predictive intelligence clustering framework in the past to identify patterns in your unstructured data that lives in, let's say, incident or case short descriptions and descriptions. We've taken that capability and we've built it right into the process mining solution. So once you've narrowed down a set of records via, let's say, bottleneck, variance, breakdown, filtering, and findings, you're likely going to want to get some more information from the records themselves. Clustering is going to help us get that information and determine how best to address the inefficiency. Root cause analysis helps us find connections and influencers in the data based on the record attributes like category, channel, or assignment group. And then we can use these different things to help us further filter down the records. The unique thing about root cause analysis is that allows us to use the data at the creation of the record for analysis. So if you think about the way that you do reporting today, when you use the operational reporting on the platform, you're always looking at the current state of the record and the data points that live in that current state. Root cause analysis allows us to use the initial value set on the record to do some analysis. So perhaps the assignment group has changed over time or the category has changed over time. When you run a report, you're only going to see that last category. Root cause will tell us, hey, 22% of these incidents that went into this state or caused this inefficiency, they started in this assignment group. They started or were initially categorized as this. It's just another way to another lens on the data. And then finally, we have automation discovery. So this solution uses a library of 180 common IT issues and automation opportunities, and we map these to the records we're mining via a machine learning technique. The dashboard is then going to show you where your biggest potential impact would be based on acting on any of the recommended automation opportunities. And these automation opportunities are primarily virtual agent conversations that come with the out-of-the-box content packs. So just know that this is there. There's an IT taxonomy that you can use, and we recently added an HR taxonomy that you might want to configure if you're mining your HR cases. All right, let's jump into the demo piece, portion of the exercise. And like I said, if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A and I'll address them right after we complete this demonstration. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to open up this incident state analysis project, and we'll run through what we got on the screen here. First thing you'll notice across the top here, right, we've got our 22,000 incidents that we mined in this case and our 1,500 different routes to get to closure. You've got your pre-built dashboard that comes as part of the content packs that we have. And this would be the dashboard that would be aligned to the incident table if we choose to mine anything like that. But of course, you're going to create your own. And then as we move down the screen, we get to those improvement opportunities that are based on those finding definitions, both rule-based and automated. You'll notice that you've got this row here that's basically categorizing these different improvement opportunities that we captured as we mined the data. One thing I will call out is if you've not mapped your finding definitions to key performance indicators, you're going to find that this widget here will say no data. To rectify that saying no data, you need to make sure you're mapping all your finding definitions and improvement opportunities to impacted KPIs. I think we covered that in the last session as well. And then once we get down to the bottom of the screen, we start to surface all our different types of improvement opportunities. So this first one here was an example of a rule-based one. where we specifically said, go find us all the incidents that at some point in their life touch the state of awaiting caller info. So we mine the data and it flags 8,406 of them that touch, or 38% that touch the state of awaiting caller info. We see the impacted KPIs, and then we get the most important number, which is our total inefficiency, like 43 years worth of time that have been baked into things going in and out of the state of awaiting caller info. And then right from here, we can jump right into the workbench for those 8,400. We can run root cause analysis. We can run clustering analysis. We can add a note or create a continual improvement initiative or an automation center request. The next one on the list is an example of an automated finding. You'll see that we have rework on the in progress state. So what it's telling us is that 2,074 incidents, or 9%, went into the state of in progress, left the state of in progress, and then at some point in their life cycle came back to in progress. And in fact, one ticket or incident touched the state of in progress 11 times. And then again, probably most important number, the 33 years of total inefficiency packaged up in these incidents that move in and out of the state of in progress more than once. And the same trick here, we can drill down to it. So this first screen here, very powerful in helping us understand where potential opportunities might be for us to continue our journey and ask some follow-up questions of the process data. And it's also very good at giving us some areas to focus in terms of prioritizing which ones to dig into first with this total inefficiency data, or total bucket of time that we potentially could reclaim a piece of. Like 43 years, even if we just got 1% of it back, it would be a win for us. And then, like I said, right from here, we can jump in and just get to the workbench itself for those 8,400 incidents. So it'll narrow it down. If I come over here to the right-hand side of the screen, to my model options, you'll see that now we've narrowed it down. We just came into the map for 8,406. One thing to call out when you are working with the Analyst Workbench, the numbers across the top are going to stay the same and represent the entire data set that you've mined. And then if you ever want to see your record, your routes, and your average duration, these metrics for the data that you filtered, you would come over here to the model options piece to see the filtered data activity. What I'll do now is I'm just going to hit this clear all to bring us back to the entire data set. And you'll see here, we went from 8,400 to 22,000 again. One thing I do like to call out is you see that we have 1,500 routes here on the map itself. It doesn't look like we're working with 1,500 different routes. And that's because by default, we just show you the top 20%. So what we can do here is we can expand this slider. And this is going to expand it out to start showing us all the different routes. I've had a few customers who, when they've turned process mining on for the first time, they say, I'm not really seeing all that much. And it's because they didn't know that they needed to expand this map out to show them all the different connections that potentially could be available. On the map itself, if I just zoom in real quick, one of the things you'll notice, in this case, we've chosen a state as an activity. So we're looking at the volume and the velocity of the tickets going from state to state in the process here. So here you've got your volume and velocity. If you wanted to change the metrics that you're looking at on the arcs themselves, you have the ability to adjust from the default unique occurrences to maybe you want to look at the max duration or the average duration. In this case here, you might want to look at the total duration, or maybe you want to turn the secondary metric off. So you can adjust those here. To dig into the arcs themselves and look for opportunities, you may choose to use this bottleneck analysis piece here. And what bottleneck analysis allows us to do is look at all the different transitions or arcs on the map and then start sorting them by like, hey, I want to look at the arcs that have the longest average duration, or the ones that have the greatest standard deviation, or the ones that are happening most often, or unique occurrences of it. And we can do things like, hey, come in here and say, show me all the situations in which transitions that involve the state of awaiting caller info. And I can see here awaiting caller info to in progress. I've got 19 years worth of time packaged up in that transition. And then the first half of that in progress to awaiting caller info, there's 22 years worth of time. So there's where a lot of our time is being spent, things moving in and out of the state of awaiting caller info. At this point, we can then do some different things. We can come over here and we can use the map to say, well, if I really want to dive into that awaiting caller info issue, maybe I just want to click on the node itself and apply a transition and narrow it down to just focusing on awaiting caller info. And if we bring back our transition over here, look at this. We're right back to that same place, the 8,406, that improvement opportunity that was at the top of the list on the summary and insights page called us. We could have just, and we did jump right to here, but I wanted to show you some other capabilities inside of the map to narrow it down to this. Once we do that, what do we do next? Well, we've got our breakdowns, right, on the left-hand side. So our breakdowns allow us to slice and dice the map by things like assignment group, priority, category, any way that you've structured your data, you can use as a breakdown. One thing I will caution you on is try to keep your breakdown elements, in the hundreds. You don't want to have millions of different values on the left-hand side of the screen here. It's just going to take forever to paint the screen. So like something like CI is not a great thing to use as a breakdown unless you filter it ahead of time. Very often when we're looking at things going into the state of awaiting caller info, maybe we want to do channel analysis to see if we can improve an intake experience to eliminate some of that back and forth that might be slowing us down. So what you can do, and you can see here, is that we've got these initially by default, the channels, self-service, portal, email, they're stacked or ranked by the volume, the number of records, right? So the most records. We can change the way that we're ranking these, maybe to look at the channels that had the longest average duration. And we can also filter these breakdowns if we wanted to do that. We'll do that a little bit later on in the demo. I can change the way that we're visualizing this to get a sense of the kind of the scale of each of these channels in this case. But one of the most interesting things to always look at is you've got your volume, right? But then you also have your velocity, that average duration. What we can see here is that things that come in via email on average take 1 week longer than the first two channels. So it gives you visibility into both the volume and the velocity in one view, which is super helpful when you're trying to make decisions about kind of where to focus your attentions. And now we can just drill it down to just those things that came in via email and went into awaiting caller info. Then you can do some additional things, right? We can come over here and we can start to use these options on the pop-up. Because you're in the platform, you can always get down into the detailed records themselves. That's a huge advantage. And of course, ACLs are going to apply here as you drill into this. If you don't have rights to see these records, you're not going to see them. The other thing that I always like to point out here is you've got a couple of options on this list view. One is you could launch process mining. If you just wanted to create a process mining project for just these 1,300, you could do that right from a list. Also, I like to call out this hidden feature of the platform called interactive analysis. If you remember me saying multiple times probably that we're having a conversation with the data, one of the cool things about the platform is as you drill into the records, it gives you more capabilities to continue that conversation, to continue asking questions about what you're seeing. In a single click, we can turn this into an interactive dashboard to continue that conversation. We may want to get use the root cause analysis capability that we talked about earlier to start seeing what some of the leading influencers or contributors to things going into the state of awaiting caller info were. Or right from here, we can run cluster analysis and start looking at that unstructured data inside of the tickets, the short descriptions and the descriptions. So we can see here that we have clusters, a cluster of tickets that came in via email, went into awaiting caller info that have people talking about changing their email address. And maybe we want to focus in on that, or changing their cost center or their manager. Maybe we want to focus in on that opportunity. And then right from any one of these, we can drill down to those records and continue to dig into them. But the clustering will help organize them a little bit better and kind of guide us to the next question we're going to ask. Now, as we do these things, once we find an opportunity to improve, two ways in which we can capture that. One is we can come here and we can add a note and say something like, hey, at Able, take a look at intake experience for email update. Attach a snapshot, post this. Email, that's going to send a notification to Able. Able is going to click on the link. It's going to bring them right into this project. They're going to hit preview, and that's going to kind of take them right to the same place in the analysis that I was doing here. Or I mentioned that connection with continual improvement management, where we can either create a new continual improvement management initiative or link to an existing one, or that connection with Automation Center, where we can create a new Automation Center request or link to an existing one. It's just going to link the project. So that in those two interfaces, somebody has the ability to come back in here and start looking at the data that we saw and why we thought we might want to align or make this improvement or justify the improvement initiative itself. All right, we've covered a lot. We looked at a lot of different things. A couple more things that I want to show you in here. So I'm just going to clear all, close this. One of my favorite capabilities is this transition filter. So know that you have two options down here. One is the condition filter. This works just like the standard reporting. So you want to filter these incidents by a category. You maybe want to use the related list condition to filter this out and only show incidents that have breached an SLA. So you can come in here, link to that and say, I only care about incidents that has breached is true. You hit apply. This is going to filter it down to only the incidents that have breached an SLA. Or my favorite one is using the transition filters to kind of look at the audit log data or use that for some filtering. So doing things like saying, hey, I only care about, show me the, in this case, incidents that went from the state of new to in progress. State is in progress. And then from in progress, let's make this eventually followed by. And then after they went into the state of in progress, they were eventually followed by the state of resolved. But you know what? I only care about ones that took longer than 2 days before we started the work. And then once we started the work, I only want to focus in on things that took less than 2 hours to resolve. So again, we lost a lot of time waiting to start the work, but once we started the work, it was super easy work for us to do. Those potentially are a feeding ground for automation opportunities and an area in which we can reclaim a ton of time from a productivity perspective. And we can hit apply here, and this will narrow it down to just those tickets that took less than 2 hours to go from in progress to resolved, right? And then what I can do is I can actually start to use the histogram here. Right, histogram, we can look at repetition. So maybe we only focus on the things that went through this process of in progress to resolve 2 times, or the ones that went through it once. Or from an analysis perspective, this is breaking it down by the time it took for these things to move from in progress to resolve. Maybe I want to even narrow this down further to things that took less than 15 minutes for us to move from in progress to resolve. I can use the histogram to apply that filter set here. And then what I can do is I can come in here, I can show the records again if I wanted to look at showing the records from this arc. All right, I can run the cluster analysis, or maybe I want to save this as a filter set and just say, super easy things to solve, maybe automate, and save this filter set. And now I'll have this available to me. Next time I come back in, I'll have the data around this. Anytime we remind, it will isolate just based on these conditions that I put in this case here. And then once you have these saved filter sets, these are super handy for doing like side-by-side comparison. One of my favorite use cases is to create a filter set that says like, hey, prior to this date, go get me all the data. So prior to a process change, let's look at those. And then I can come here and I can hit this comparison and I can say, hey, now go get me all, let's use the filter set for things that were isolated or bucketed for after the process change, right? You can do this side-by-side comparison using breakdowns. So you can look at region A versus region B, vendor A versus vendor B. And then once you got these side-by-side, you can use this comparison statistics option to start giving you some data about the difference. Like, hey, after the process change, look what we've done. We've reduced our closure times or our average duration of these tickets by 5 hours. So a win. But it just gives you data around any adverse effects that might be, or visibility into any potential adverse effects that might be caused by a change that you made. Last thing that I want to touch on here, and we're going to use a different project for this. Let's use our state. We've just been looking at how things are moving from state to state in a process. But as I've mentioned, and as we did the last time, we built a project that used assignment group as an activity. It's one of the most popular use cases is to kind of use assignment group on the map and look for those multi-hop situations or where we're losing time in team transfers or tickets being transferred between different teams in the organization. So what we can do here is we can expand this out to just look at kind of how things are moving from team to team. Just like we had on the other map, we're looking at the groups and the volume and velocity of the tickets moving between groups. But a great way to start narrowing down this data is to use our variation analysis. So the variation analysis allows us to look at all of the different routes that things took to get to closure inside of here. So we can start looking and sorting these by the long running routes, the ones that are taking, the routes that we're taking most often, the ones that have the most steps, which is always an interesting thing to do. But we can also start to filter those routes and say, you know what? I only care about the routes that take greater than X number of steps, multi-hop situations, let's say. And you want a little bit of meat on the bone from a records perspective, right? You don't want the onesie twosies. You want to look for these things that, have happened more than once. So and let's just use 10 here, and we'll hit apply. And this allows us to narrow it down to those specific routes that went through multiple steps and, have a few records included in them. It's just not a one-time thing. And I can see here I have these 26 that on average took 1 month and 17 hours to go from IT Support Americas to Support IT, back to IT Support Americas. And then you can filter and just show that route. And we can actually start to see where the time is being spent. So it comes into Support IT or IT Support Americas. They hang on to it for a day. They pass it to Support IT. They hang on to it for 4 weeks, and then they pass it back to IT Support Americas. So you can see now where the time is. This is useful for saying like, hey, do we even need to transfer to that second team? Can we train up the first team? Or maybe we bypass the first team altogether and get it to that second team and reclaim some of this time. And like I was mentioning during the slides, just know that if you want to get to the records or run root cause or run clustering on these, you need to use this option up here, unlike the prior example where you were kind of had all those options on the pop-up. It's just a little bit different view when you start using the variation analysis. And I think I covered all the different things that we covered in the slides. I think we looked at each of those in this demonstration piece here. So let's jump back over to the slides. So now at this point, many folks said, this is great, Dan. You used incident for a lot of your examples because that happens to be where my best demo data is, or my richest set of data to show you the capabilities are. But you can apply process mining and the things that we just saw to most workflows running on the ServiceNow platform. So there's an offering for ITSM, so things like incident problem change. If you happen to be using us for a customer or any of the industry workflows we have, process mining is available for that. If you're using us for HR case and lifecycle events, you can apply process mining there. Field service management, strategic portfolio management, all options. If you've built your own applications on the platform with Creator Workflows and App Engine, you can apply process mining to those. And then as of the Vancouver release, we've opened our process mining solution up to external process data. So you might be running a process in SAP or Oracle, or maybe we use smart recruiters here at ServiceNow. If you can extract audit log level data from those systems, you can import it into ServiceNow and apply process mining on top of those to look for bottlenecks in those workflows. If you wanted to learn more or spend some time specifically on any of those individual offerings, there's on the community site, there's I guess a blog post that we'll call this that kind of has a link to each of we have recorded sessions for each of those different areas. So if you wanted to dive deeper into that external data offering, there's a recorded session, Academy session that covers just that. If you wanted to dive deeper into field service management, there's a recorded Academy session just for that. So you can learn a little bit more about those individual workflows if you want. And then what do you do next? Well, if you've not already turned on the plugin, you can go out, you can turn the plugin on. You should be turning this core process mining plugin on an instance that is pro level or above. That's like the prereq, but you turn this plugin on. And then in addition to the core plugin for each of the workflows, as I've mentioned throughout the presentation, we have content packs that get you those finding definitions or improvement opportunities for each of the workflows that you're interested in. Just make sure that you install the content pack for the workflows that you're going to be mining, in addition to that core process mining content pack. So in addition to these sessions that we're running, there's also other resources out there. There's this on-demand training on the Now Learning site called Process Mining Essentials, if you wanted to check that out. We use process mining here at ServiceNow. We've applied process mining to over 40 different processes, and we have a white paper out there that looks at how we've approached process mining from an organizational perspective. And it covers 5 or 6 of the initial findings we had when we started standing up process mining. There is a community forum page. It's called a product hub on the community.servicenow.com. There's a specifically for process mining product hub. Feel free to go there, post questions. We answer them on a daily basis when you post questions there. We also post tons and tons of content there, whether they be blog posts that answer specific questions or recorded sessions like our Process Mining Academy series. So there's about 20 plus Academy sessions out there now that do deep dives into different areas. Like if you really wanted to learn and spend 45 minutes talking about the histogram, there's a 45-minute session about the histogram visualization and how to use that best in that library of Academy sessions. We also have a use case series. These are 5-minute videos that walk through using process mining to do things like SLA breach analysis, channel analysis, longer to route than resolve type analysis, that before and after a process change scenario. So a lot of the stuff that we covered here today is actually packaged up in that use case series. And we'll be diving deeper into 5 or 6 of these use cases in the next session. And then lastly, if you have folks in your organization that you want to see process mining in action or kind of get a better understanding of it, on that community page, there is a why and what of in-platform process mining post. There's a 10-minute overview recording, as well as a 6-minute demo available on that page. If you want to share that with others in your organization, that exists. All right, hopefully you've been posting some questions in the Q&A section, but if you haven't and you've got questions about anything that we covered here today, please post those in the Q&A or the chat now, and I'll do my best to answer them. So I'll give you a minute now to post any questions you might have about anything that we covered here today or any process mining topic. Get those questions in there. Well, if nobody has any questions, I'm not seeing any yet. Just a reminder about the program and kind of the next dates. So this is session 3, and it's the second running of session 3, in which we focused on how to use the Analyst Workbench to find improvement opportunities. In the next session next month, we'll just dive into 5 common use cases, like how to use process mining to do SLA breach analysis, or that before and after a process change scenario. We'll walk through 5 common use cases, and at that point, you should have what you need to kind of get going and start being successful with process mining. If you've missed any of the prior sessions, that why and what of process mining, that demo, that's available on that link that that blog post that I just spoke about. We did take the session number 2, how to create your first process mining project, and we took that video and posted it as part of the very first Process Mining Academy session available on the community site. So if you missed the last session, you want to go back and learn the content, feel free to check out Process Mining Academy session 1 on the community site, and you can get things answered there, or you can learn a little bit more there. All right, last chance for romance. Anybody have any questions or anything that they want to get addressed before we turn into a pumpkin today? If not, I'll just thank you for your time, say happy mining, and we'll see you next time.